Hello and welcome to 5th Period English Online. I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about what our expectations will be for working in the online environment, and then I will jump into our first lesson, which will be due tonight, Monday. Online school has both benefits and challenges. One of the benefits is you can go to school kind of on a self-driven schedule. You can go in your pajamas or your most comfortable clothes, but there also comes with challenges. Being a successful online student requires an enormous amount of self-discipline. You have to make sure that you do all of the work each day. You also are going to have the added challenge, because everyone's at home right now, of working while your siblings are home or your parents are home, the dogs want attention, and so on. Everyone is adjusting to something very unusual and unprecedented. So it's not going to be as easy as that is when you come home at night and do your homework. It changes. So as of right now, we're not going to write journals. That may change in the future. We will also do vocabulary and grammar and all of that stuff. All of the work will be done electronically and uploaded through Google Classroom. You've all worked in Google Classroom in my class before, so this is not new. Don't email me assignments, but please email me questions. I will be checking emails throughout the day from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. So you can expect a response within an hour or so. If there's any reason that I have to be offline for any extended period of time, I will post that notice in Google Classroom. So the types of assignments that we'll do, there will be assignments like you would do papers or answering questions. There will also be online discussion boards. This week we're working on Emily Dickinson, and it's hard to have a full discussion on a 3-stanza poem, but once we've read a few of them, then we can have an actual discussion. So you won't always be doing book work. Sometimes it will flip-flop. And when we get to that point, I will let you know how to do the discussions. So let's start with Emily Dickinson. So we've already learned a lot about Emily Dickinson because we watched that movie, but let's review since it's been a couple of weeks since then. More so than any other writer in American literature, Emily Dickinson's biography has a tendency to overdetermine and overwhelm her actual poetry. On the surface, she seems like a spinster woman who is obsessed with death, and a lot of times she gets criticized that way. You will see that there are many different versions of Emily Dickinson, and we kind of saw this in the movie, although some of the times she read her own poetry. They didn't say which one she read, so some of the things you'll read actually do sound familiar based on the movie. So she was a pious Christian. She was a feminist. She was a heartbroken spinster, a batty old aunt, an intense intellectual, and the list goes on. After we read some of her poetry, you will see that she is one of the most influential poets of the 19th century. The Dickinson family was prosperous enough to provide Dickinson with as good an education as was available in the United States at the time. In addition to formal education, Dickinson was a voracious reader, particularly of British writers such as Shakespeare, Milton, Keats, Dickens, Browne, Tennyson, Barrett Browning, George Eliot, and the Bronte sisters. Of course, part of that reason was that was really the literature that was available, because it was poets like Emily Dickinson and other writers that began to create the American voice. The education that Dickinson received at Amherst Academy and Mount Holyoke was presented in a religious context, and her vexed relationship, that means her troubled relationship, with religion is evident at this early stage. While the religious climate of Boston was becoming increasingly secular and increasingly humanist under the influence of Unitarianism, Amherst was still in many ways steeped in the Calvinist theology of its Puritan ancestors. So poems such as "Some Keep the Sabbath Going to Church" testify that Dickinson's relationship with religion was complex, to say the least. We kind of saw that in the very beginning of the movie as well. As a poet, Dickinson would learn from the Puritan tradition to pay careful attention to the world around her, just as her Puritan ancestors had searched for evidence of God's will in the natural environment. Dickinson wrote most of her poetry, about 2/3 of it, during her late 20s and into her mid-30s. One of Dickinson's 20th century editors, Thomas Johnson, put a total number of Dickinson's poems at 1,778. Since then, scholars have identified other poems embedded in letters and written on scraps of paper. Despite being so prolific a poet, Dickinson chose to publish fewer than a dozen poems during her lifetime. Most of them were published in newspapers, and in virtually every case, the poems that she did publish were altered by the editors to conform to contemporary tastes. These editors disagreed with Dickinson's penchant for the slant rhyme and her tendency to break with traditional metrical forms. It may be for this reason that Dickinson did not more actively seek out opportunities for publication. Despite reaching out to prominent writers such as Thomas Wentworth Higginson for advice, indeed, Dickinson herself wrote that publication is the auction of the mind of man in one of her poems, which many scholars and readers take as her definitive statement for why she chose not to publish. It was not until 1890, 4 years after her death, that a volume of Dickinson's poems was published. As with earlier newspaper publications, the editors of the volume modified Dickens' irregular metrical forms and slant rhymes to conform to the contemporary tastes. A homily is a short sermon on a biblical topic or a pithy little platitude designed to teach a moral lesson. A number of Dickinson's poems fall into this category, such as the poems listed on this slide. One poem that we are going to discuss is Success is Counted Sweetest, and this is actually in your textbook. A couple slides ago, I mentioned slant rhyme, so let's talk about what that is real quick. Slant rhyme is a rhyme in which either the vowels or the consonants of a stressed syllables are identical. For example, eyes, light, and years, yours. So if you look at eyes and light, it's the long I sound that is stressed. It's not a rhyme in the traditional sense because it's in the middle of the word. And then years and yours, it's the ers sound, that RS sound. The words do not rhyme, but the RS sound is similar, and that's the slant rhyme. So let's look at an example from the first stanza of Success is Counted Sweetest. A stanza is the first section of a poem, and stanzas are separated by a break in line, so an extra space. Success is counted sweetest by those who ne'er succeed. To comprehend a nectar requires sorest need. So if we look at the words sweetest and succeed, the long E's are slant rhyme. The words do not end in an E sound, but it's within the words that becomes a slant rhyme. Whereas succeed and need actually do rhyme because they end in the same ending. So your assignment is to read Emily Dickinson's Success is Counted Sweetest on page 757 in your textbook, and then go online and there's a Google form with questions for you to answer. And further instructions will be found in the form. You guys have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.